In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint a member of the Splintered Fang warband for Warcry. If you want to learn how to paint your miniatures and get them looking great and on the table, then please consider subscribing. Let's make a start with this Splintered Fang True Blood. So we're going to start with the flesh, but just the base layer of the flesh. So I've got Kislev Flesh, Zenithal Prime again, and I'm just going to go in and cover all the flesh with this Kislev Flesh. Nice and thin so we don't lose any detail. So I'm just going to go around and paint all the fleshy areas. And then once I've done that, I'm going to let it dry, and I may need to put another coat into some of the areas where the black primer is strongest. But I'll assess that once it's dry. I don't mind it too much, as these have got quite a poisoned look on some of their skin. So I'm going to go around and finish the flesh, and then we'll come back. I ended up going back in and doing 2 coats of the Kislev Flesh, and the reason I've done that is because the next stage is all the metallics. Now the metallics are all over the model. So we've got the body armour here. Now I'm using Leadbelcher to put a base down for this, and the reason I did the skin base coat first is because there's potential I may get some metallic onto the skin, and because the skin base coat is down, it's just a bit easier to go in and correct anything or any mistakes at this stage. So you've got this armour here which runs over the chest and back. You've also got this greave on the one leg here. You can see how the Zenithal has worked on this piece of armour. But the other significant area, or 2 significant areas, is we've got this kind of padded metallic effect here. So I'll show it on this one. So I'm just going to cover this in Leadbelcher as well. And we're going to get some cool effects on this metal as we go through the paint job. So I'm going to go back in now, paint all the other metal bits. Don't forget you've got the trident here, the claws, and the forearm guard as well. So we're going to get all that painted up, and then we'll come back and carry on with the next stage of the metallics. Once all the silver bits are done, I'm going to go in and shade them all with Nuln Oil. I say all of them. I'm going to shade the hard armour. So this is the armour on the chest and around the back. If you put a bit too much on like I've done there, you can just work it round. Use your brush to suck some of it up and keep moving it. Just work it into all the recesses, because this will settle quite nicely and give us a nice real natural shadow on the armour. With the helmet as well, just going to pop it on there. It's really important that you work it around, get it into all the recesses, because it'll give you a nice bit of edge highlighting when we get to that point as well. So I'm just going to finish up all these hard bits of armour, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at the softer parts. Whilst the Nuln Oil dries on the hard metal parts, we're going to shade the softer metal parts with Akhellian Green contrast paint. So you don't want to put too much on your brush. You just want to work it into the recesses. This is going to give a really nice shiny Akhellian Green. Some of you may be thinking Alpha Legion. So just going to work that in there on all the soft metallic parts, and that's starting to look really nice. So we're going to go ahead and finish that. Make sure you get all the bits as well, because you don't want some odd bits and pieces outlying. And then we'll come back and we'll have a look at highlighting everything. So I'm going to highlight all the silver metal now, and I'm going to use chrome from Model Air. So we're going to edge highlight most of it, and to do that just use the contours of the model. Just run your brush along the edges and you can get a really nice highlight like that. Make sure that when it comes to the weapons that you possibly go a little brighter than you normally would, and the reason for that is these weapons are all poisoned, so we want a nice light base coat that we can put the poison effect on when we come to that part. So just work your way around and just edge highlight all the darker silver that you've now got. When it comes to an area like this, you've got a natural highlight in there, so you can just accentuate that with the chrome paint. And don't forget as well that you've got all the silver parts on the netting as well to highlight. Okay, so I'm just going to go around, check that I've got all those parts, and then we'll come back and we'll have a little look at doing the gold or bronze metallics. We'll do the bronze metal next, and we'll use Balthasar Gold for that. So we've just got the serpent head in here. So it's going to work the Balthasar Gold in. And we've got a nice little bit of triangular design here, so just be careful we don't get any on the bits we've already painted when we get down to that bit. And then the other bits of gold we've got are the serpent part on his, or her staff I should say. So let's get that covered, and again being careful not to cover up or go and get this onto any bits we've already painted silver. And then we've got this symbol here as well, which is another serpent, and painting it with the Balthasar Gold just gives a little bit of interest around the belt buckle area. So again, being really careful not to get it onto any of the silver parts we've already painted. There's also a few bracelets as well, like this on the wrist here, which we can do with Balthasar Gold. So I'm going to go around and find any other little bits and pieces, and then we'll shade this with some Nuln Oil. So with all the Balthasar Gold done, we're just going to take some Nuln Oil, and we're just going to paint that over into the recesses, just to add a bit of shading and take the edge off the gold a little bit, because I guess this is meant to look like a battered type of bronze. So let's just get the Balthasar Gold covered in Nuln Oil. You see the additional bits that I've kind of gone and done. So there's a serpent there, there's a few embellishments, bracelets, so just be really careful that you don't get too much of this onto that Kislev Flesh on the skin. Yeah. Okay, next up we'll highlight that Balthasar back up a little bit. To highlight the Balthasar Gold, we're going to use Runlard Brass. Now, the consistency of this paint's not great, so don't put too much on your brush, but we're just going to use this to catch those edges, and this will just give it a nice subtle colour change. Just take your time doing this. You don't want to put too much on the model. Just use the pronounced edges to get that highlight on. And I've already worked my way through the rest of the bits and pieces. This is a little bit here. And there we are, that's done. So next up we're going to look at doing the purple cloth. So that's just the inside here and then the, I guess, outline of this part here. The colour we're going to use to base the inside of this cloth is Xereus Purple. So just be careful when you're applying it close to parts you've already done, because it'll just be really difficult to go back in and correct those bits without going back and forth trying to solve the issue. So just work it in there. We'll come back and shade it in a bit. And just be really careful, because you do need to use it on the outline here as well. So when you get close to those scales, just take your time. Use the shape of the fabric and just work your way around carefully like that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of this off cam. Don't forget you've got these bits here to do as well. And then we'll come back and have a look at shading and highlighting it. Once the purple is all down, I'm just going to run some Nuln Oil down the edge, just to give a little bit of separation with the scale areas. Now this isn't too thick at all. Just take your time, be careful that you don't get it everywhere. And then as for the inside, we've got a little bit of detailing in there, so I'm just going to put a little bit more in. Once I put it in there, I'm going to wipe my brush off on some tissue, and I'm just going to go back in and take away that big bit of Nuln Oil, because what I don't want to do is have a massive black pool of Nuln Oil there, because that won't look very good at all. I'm going to do the same on the inside here. Just going to work it all the way down. You can see I've missed a little bit of purple there as well, and I've missed a little bit of shading on there, so I'm just going to pop that in. I'll go back and put that purple on now, and then we'll have a look at highlighting this part. We're going to highlight that purple with Warpfiend Grey, and this is going to be fairly easy, straightforward highlight, because it's just going to follow the contours on the model. So it's really important, don't have too much paint on your brush, because if you do, you'll run the risk of it going over other parts, or just overloading one part of the model and then getting it all over the scales as well, which we don't want. So just take your time, add it on bit by bit. And when it comes to doing this bit, you might want to tilt the model a little, so you can just work your way around the bottom there. I said earlier about this little bit of detailing here, so we could probably look to put a little highlight on the inside there that just follows that indentation that's inside there. Just take your time. Working that in. That'll look pretty good. So that's the purple all done. So we'll go in next and have a little look at some of the darker colours. So we're going to do the leather and the net in black. We're going to do the shorts in like a dark green, and then we'll have the skin and the hair and the headdress to do, as well as the tail, and then we're done. I'm going to do all the black detail next. That's things like the haft, the net, and all the straps on the armour, that hold it all on as well. So we start with a haft. This is pretty straightforward, you don't need me to show you too much about how to paint black paint. Just make sure it is nice and thin though, so it doesn't go on too thickly, and be really careful when you get to those bits you've already painted. For example, when you start to get into the cloth there, just take your time and get it done. So that's the haft. When it comes to the straps as well, you really need to take your time, get a good point on your brush, and then just follow over where the model takes you. So I'll go away and finish the rest of the black leather and things like the netting. Be careful not to paint over some of the metallic bits you've already painted, and then we'll come back for the highlight. Once the black base is down, we're going to do a really simple highlight with Mechanicus Standard Grey. The key to this, as with most things, is let the model do the work. So where we've got the net, just going to run the brush down the outside and give us that highlight. Same with the middle links of the net. That's really straightforward and easy. When it comes to the strapping, we're just going to be really careful. Make sure we haven't got too much paint on the brush, and make sure that we've got a nice point on the brush so that we can just work it along those elevated edges just to get a nice highlight. And same with the strapping there, and the strapping that's holding everything together there. And when it comes to the staff, we can just put a nice chunky highlight down it like that. So I'm going to go ahead and finish the rest of the highlight of the black, and then we'll come back and we'll have a little look at the pants. I'm going to base coat the pants in Incubi Darkness. Now, even though this is a really dark base colour, you may need a couple of coats. You can see there where it goes on, it doesn't always cover light colours very well. So there's no problem. Just pop the first coat down and then come back and just go over again with the second coat when you're done. Once we've finished with the Incubi Darkness, we may give it a wash of Nuln Oil just to darken it down and create some differentiation between all the various bits and the creases. So I'm just going to go away and do that, and if I need to put another coat on I will, otherwise I'll show you the shading stage next. So just want to add some separation between all the different layers and folds in the shorts. So I'm just going to use some Nuln Oil and just work it around there into all those areas to make sure that we can really get a decent amount of highlighting on there. So that was really straightforward. So once that dries, we'll come back and we'll highlight, and the highlight colour we're going to use is Kabalite Green. So first off, it's the Kabalite Green, and I've switched my brush to a 00 Winsor Newton for this because it's just a finer highlight, and you're just looking for all the creases to go along the top line there, and just work it along the top of the pants there. Now we've got an opportunity to just pop some highlight along there. You can see I've gone with the Nuln Oil there, so that means I'm going to have to go back in and just repair that a little bit. Same on this side, straightforward enough. Just work it along the shape of the pants, looking for the folds, and then on the front, same again across the top, just work our way across there, and then we've got the bottom of the shorts there. So that's the first highlight. Second highlight is with Sybarite Green, and this is essentially just a thinner highlight on top of the Kabalite Green, and that's why I've gone for the the 00 Winsor Newton. I'll pop a link to these in the description because they are pricey, but I think on balance they are probably the best brushes I've used. Just work it along there so you get a nice highlight, and same along the here, just those little lines like that simulate the cracking of the leather. Simulate another one along there like that, and then just around the front we've got some cracking here that we can work in, and a little bit on the bottom. So that's the pants finished, and next up we'll have a little look at the tail and then the poison vial. So for the tail, it's nice and easy. I'm going to use Militarum Green contrast paint. So I'm just going to put that on and let it work itself into all the recesses. So it'll give a natural highlight there, and because of the zenithal prime, you don't have to worry too much. You get some natural shading on there as well. So this is essentially a one step and done on the tail, which is great because it saves us time. Now I'm going to let that dry. I may go in and put a little highlight on it, but for start for 10, that's pretty good. So I'll move on to the poison bottle while that Militarum Green is drying. I'm just going to paint the whole thing with Caliban Green. So this is a nice dark green. It's one, again, it's one of those colours that doesn't really cover over a light undercoat that well. So just take your time, especially when you've got to work it in here and you're working it up close against some of the strapping and the metal on the lid of the canister. Just take time, pop it in there. That's pretty nice and easy. As this is drying on the tail, I think actually I'm going to leave it like that because I don't think it needs another highlight. It actually looks pretty good, differentiated from the rest of the model pretty well. So I'm going to go away and we'll just prepare the next few colours ready for that vial of poison. Next up on the poison vial is a sort of lighter green. We're going to go with Warpstone Glow. And for this, we're just going to pull it down so that we get the nice decent bit of colour. It should be okay. You should only just need one coat of that. And then what we want to do is just on some of the angles of this, we just want to pop some lines down just to put some shine on the bottle of poison there. Once that's done, we'll move on to a lighter green again. I'm going to go to Sybarite Green, and again this is just going to go a little bit lower down on the vial. So that gives you a nice light colour. And one thing I'll probably do is I'll just put a little spot here to imitate reflection there, and the same on the back side. And then we'll just go and make that poison look a little bit more vicious with some yellows. So it's just a little bit of Flash Gitz yellow. I'm just going to draw this really thin line down. You see it's starting to look a little bit more poisonous in nature. Just work it on the inside as well. and a little bit down the back. There you go, that's the poison vial finished. So we're nearly at the end now. So there's a couple of things we're going to do. The last thing we're going to do is the skin. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the plume. We've got the grip there. We've got the hair. So we're going to do those first. And to get those started, I'm just going to use Sybarite Green as a base coat on the hair. So this is really straightforward to apply. Just pop it on. Careful not to go over anything we've already done, of course, as usual. And just work that onto the plume. We also want to do that on the hair. So again, be really careful not to go onto things we've already done. And just work it into the hair. I'll go ahead and finish this and come back once we've got the whole thing covered up. Once the Sybarite Green is on there, I've just mixed some white scarring with the Sybarite Green. So this is a really light colour as a highlight, and I'm just going to run this over all the hair and also the plume. And again, where we can, just use the shape of the model to get that highlight on. We'll go back and we'll separate out the different colours on there once we've finished this stage, but that's looking a lot brighter now, which is what we're after. So just do the other side as well. Just make sure you keep the paintbrush on the raised ridges, because we don't want this to drop into any of the shadows. Just work your way all the way around, and don't forget the hair on this side as well. So that's the first highlight. Now it's a little bit messy at the moment, so we just want to catch some of these higher areas. There, that's looking pretty good at the moment. And then we've also got the tops here, so we can just work our way, just run the brush over. And we'll come back. So that's the one colour we're going to do. We'll come back in a second with the other colour. So to do the differentiation in colour on the plume and some of the bits of hair, we're going to go back to the Akhellian Green. Don't put too much on the brush. We have a look here, we just want to take a segment and then just work the Akhellian Green into that segment. So that gives us a really nice differentiation on the plume. We'll do the same on the other side as well. And when we do it on the other side, make sure we do it in the same places, so that it's really easy to get a bit of symmetry on the model. Just work it in gently like that, nice and straightforward. We'll just work our way around the back. And we'll probably put one right at the bottom as well. And just remember, when you're doing this, don't use too much paint, because it can get out of hand really easily. And then we're just going to take some bits of hair, and we're just going to add it to some of the strands. And you can pick the strand that you're going to add it to. Doesn't take too much. So there we are. So that's the hair and the plume done. Next up, we'll have a look at doing the strapping. We'll have a look at adding the poison to the weapons, and then we'll finish up with the skin. I've tidied up the strapping with some Wraithbone. I've also done the skull as well. I'm just going to run some Agrax Earthshade over it. Just make sure it doesn't pool too much there, and work the Agrax Earthshade over this bit as well. Always be careful about the bits that you've already painted, although with the hand we will go in and correct that a little bit as we work our way through the flesh parts, which are going to be the last parts on the model. So we're pretty much done. We're getting there. We've just got the flesh to do as the major part, and we've also just got to put some poison on the blade here and on these spikes here. So the colour we're going to use for that is contrast paint again, and it's going to be Plaguebearer Flesh. So I'm just going to go and give that a good shake because some of the medium is settled, and we'll come back and then I'll show you how to apply it. So with the Plaguebearer Flesh, you don't want too much on your brush at all. In fact, you want hardly anything on your brush, and you're just going to start from about halfway up here and just move your brush down. Same here and same here, and what you'll see is very little at all. So we're going to do the same on these claws. We're going to start about halfway and we're just going to move the brush up, and what you'll see is that the claws start to tint a greeny yellow. So let's try that on the other side here. So very little on your brush, just work it down about halfway. So it's really important that you let that dry. So that first side is probably dry because this paint's going on really thin. I'm not thinning with everything, it's going straight from the pot, but I've got hardly anything on my brush. And all you can do then is the lower you get down, you can start to add a little bit more. Same here, we're going to add some more closer to the tips. And this is just going to build that colour up, so it's like a subtle poison effect on the weapons. And we'll put one more coat on. Again, really thin paint, straight from the pot. What I am doing is I'm wiping most of it off my brush, and then just wiping it in a paper towel to take most of it away. And then I'll just fill that in towards the bottom. You can really start to see it coming up now. So that's looking nice and poisonous. And the same for these claws. And that's it done. So the last part is to do the flesh, and doing the flesh, what we'll do is we're going to go around the model and just double check that any bits need touching up. So I'm going to do that now with Kislev Flesh, and then we'll come back and we'll get the flesh finished and then the model finished. I've gone around and I've checked the model, I've touched up any bits of flesh that need it. So the shade we're going to put on this is Athonian Camoshade. I'm not going to thin it straight from the pot, but I'm just going to make sure that it gets a good run down into all the various bits and pieces, all the areas. Now the reason I'm using Athonian Camoshade as opposed to Arhellian Flesh Shade or Agrax Earthshade is just to follow on the theme really of the Splintered Fang and their penchant for snake bites. So I figured if they're all being bitten by snakes, then they'll have a little bit of poison flowing through their veins. So I'm just going to work around the model and make sure that I get that Athonian Camoshade in there, and that's giving a yellowy green hue to all the flesh. What's really important when you do this is that you make sure it doesn't pool anywhere. So if I take this leg and I just throw that on, you can see that that's really pooling quite badly. That doesn't look very good. So what we want to do is we want to move it around all across the leg, covering all the flesh, and only really letting it pool in those deepest recesses, such as behind the knee there. And that looks much better. Same with the feet. We can afford a little bit more pooling on the feet because it's one of those areas that we can go into and it's really easy to highlight. It's also a barefoot, which means I'm going to be running around on the ground. It's going to be fairly dirty anyway. So I'm going to finish off this, make sure I've got all the bits, and we'll come back and we'll start highlighting. Once that Athonian Camoshade's dry, we just want to go back in and put some of the Kislev Flesh back in. So we're looking at really the highest areas, so we've got a little in there, along the muscle there, just across the top. So you can see there's just a little bit of separation on the muscle there. Same here, along the hip Make sure you've got a good point on your brush. Mine's getting a little out of shape, which means I need to use some brush soap. My next clean just to get that back looking good. So when you've got the legs here, so this is kind of like a big area. Just take your time and work with the model just to get that Kislev Flesh over and in. Okay, so I'm going to go away and finish the rest of it and then come back with our final skin highlight and then we're done. And the last highlight we're going to do is Flayed One Flesh, and this is just going to be on the highest parts. So we've got the fingers, and the thumb. Just got a line through there for the highest parts through the arm muscle there. A little bit here, and we've got the fingers just on this side. Work our way all the way around, and then once you've finished everything, you can go and call it done. So this member of the Splintered Fang is ready for action. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a lot of fun to make. If you have, then please leave a like down below, and if you've got any questions, then please feel free to leave a comment. If you'd like to support the channel, there are some links in the description, one of which is for Goblin Gaming, where you can get a 20% discount on Warcry or any warband that's out at the moment. And it's not just for Games Workshop, it's for all kinds of game systems. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.